So I'm going to go back and talk about my old organ playing days again, because in those days, if you, let's say you selected a string sound, which we know probably didn't sound anything like real strings in those days, but we selected our string sound, and we often had a tab or a dial that we could use that just said sustain. And life seemed so easy then, because we just turned it and it added sustain. I'm going to just show you very quickly how we can do that to any of the sounds here and save them. One of my favourite go-to sounds is the one called Natural Strings. Now, this is in the keyboard set library. So if I exit out of there and have a look at my keys tab, I can see it's actually made up of two sounds, and that's why it's stored as a keyboard set library. And we've got some strings on the lower there. They're one of the older string sounds, but they work really well in the accompaniment. That's the i3, which was a classic chord keyboard, the i3 strings there. So how would I put sustain on these two right hand sections? Well, we need to go into our menu. So just press the menu, and the tab we need is track controls. Now there are two tabs. There's the mode, and that tells us whether a sound is polyphonic or monophonic. So in other words, can we play more than one note with it, or is it just a single note? We're going to look at that another time. What we're looking at is sound edit. Now, I still on here can't see anything that says sustain, but actually there is, because it's called release. When synthesizers were first created, the actual word they used to use for sustain, and the correct term, is release, and it's when you release the note how long that sound goes on for. So we all commonly know it as sustain. We're going to need to alter it on two sounds, because there's two sounds that were mixed together, studio strings and analog strings. Basically just highlight the one you want to affect. So the first one is studio strings, and I could be on any of these. Just highlight the release, and I'm going to turn that to around about 40, just as a starting point. Now, that will give us release on the studio strings element of that keyboard set, but not the analog strings. So now let's press the analog strings, and you can see the release is still 0. So we're going to set that to 40. Now let's have a listen to our sound. Ah, nice. So now when we release that sound, we've got some sustain. Now, that might be too much for you. It might not be enough. So adjust the settings accordingly. Then what I would do is exit back, press our three little tabs at the top, save keyboard set to library, because you don't want to have to do this every time you want natural strings with sustain. And again, I reiterate, that is the beauty of saving keyboard set libraries. There is so much space in there for you to save hundreds and hundreds, more than you're ever going to need, to be honest. So having spent a bit of time making this up, let's go to the T for text. And again, all I need to do is put something on the end of that that tells me it's the sustained one. So natural strings sus. Okay. Where do we want to save it? Well, I'm going to save it into my user string bank. Doesn't matter, there's already things in there. It will fit it in to that place there. So let's exit to see. So we've got natural strings sus being saved to user strings. Save. That's now done. I never need to make that sound up again, and I can use it with whatever style I want. How would I access it? Well, let's press the strings here on the keyboard set, but it's in the user section. And there it is, natural strings with sustain. By the way, it's putting everything into alphabetical order. That's why it doesn't tag on the end. But yeah, natural strings with sustain. Let's exit. I've got studio strings, analog strings. But yeah, I've got nice sustain on there. Lovely sustain. So that's how you put sustain onto any of the sounds, and when you have done, save them as a keyboard set library.